came to this town because I had been told that my father lived here. It was my mother who told me. And I had promised her that after she died, I would go see him. I squeezed her hands as a sign I would do it. She was near death, and I would have promised her anything. She had insisted.
Don't fail to go see him.
Some call him one thing, some another. I'm sure he will want to know you. At the time, all I could do was tell her I would do what she asked. And from promising so often, I kept repeating the promise, even after I had pulled my hands free of her death grip. Still, earlier she had told me,
don't ask him for anything.
Just what's ours. What he should have given me, but never did. Make him pay, son, for all those years he's put us out of his mind. I will, Mother. I never meant to keep my promise. But before I knew it, my head began to swim with dreams, and my imagination took flight. Little by little, I began to build a world around a hope, centered on the man I called my father, the man who had been my mother's husband. That's why I had come here.
There you will find the place I love most in the world. The place where I grew thin from dreaming. My village, rising from the plain, shaded by trees and leaves like a piggy bank filled with memories. You will see why a person will want to live here forever. Dawn, morning, midday, night, always the same, except for the changes in the air. The air changes the color of things there. Life whirs by as quiet as a murmur, the pure murmuring of life.
I had expected to see the town of my mother's memories, of her nostalgia. Nostalgia laced with sighs. She had lived her lifetime sighing about her hometown, about going back, but she never had. She had given me her eyes to see.
Just as you pass the gate, there's a beautiful view of a green plain tinged with the yellow of ripe corn. From there, you can see my hometown, turning the earth white and lighting it at night. Suddenly, it will thunder and rain. You'll get used to the suddenlies there, my son.
Mother. This town is filled with echoes. It's like they were trapped behind the walls or beneath the cobblestones. When you walk, you feel like someone's behind you, stepping in your footsteps. You hear rustling and people laughing. laughter that sounds used up, and voices worn away by the years. I remember what my mother had said.
You will hear me better then.
I will be closer to you. You will hear the voice of my memories, stronger than the voice of my death. Sounds, voices, murmurs, distant singing. And here, where the air is so rare, I hear them even stronger.
Hey! Hey! What are you doing here?
I came to look for my father.
And why don't you come in?
I entered. It was a house with part of the roof caved in. The tiles were lying on the ground. On one side the roof had fallen to the ground. On the other side were a man and a woman. Are you? Who are you? And the woman smiled. But the man looked at me seriously.
He's drunk.
He's only frightened. We heard someone who was complaining and banging his head on our door. And there you are.
How long have you been here? Forever.
We were born here. What has happened to you?
So many things have happened that I only feel like going to sleep.
We were already asleep.
Then, let's all sleep.
I was almost your mother. Didn't she ever tell you about that? The thing is, there was this man, this gypsy, that went to see your mother and told her she should not sleep with any man because that night the moon was full. Oh, your mother came to me in a big hurry, telling me she could not do it, that it would be impossible for her to sleep with her husband that night. Oh, it was her wedding night. And there I was trying to convince her not to believe the gypsy, that he was only a duplicitous liar. I can't, she told me. Please go in my place. He won't be able to tell. Of course, I was much younger than she was. And I didn't have such dark hair. But still, it would not have been noticeable in the darkness. But I still told her, you have to go yourself. At that time, your mother was a young woman with humble eyes. Oh, if there was something really beautiful about your mother, it was her eyes. They were very persuasive. Please, you go in my place, she asked again. And I went. I took advantage of the darkness. And something your mother was not aware of was that I also liked her husband, your father. Oh, yes! I slept with him with pleasure and desire. Oh, I held him tight and pressed against him. But the parting from the day before left him so exhausted that he went to sleep and snored all night long. The only thing he did was to squeeze his legs in between mine. Before it got light, I got out of bed, went to see your mother. I told her, now it's your turn. This is now another day. What did he do to you? She asked. I don't know yet, I said.
I felt the photograph of my mother in the pocket of my shirt, warming my heart, as if it were also sweating. It was an old photograph, with rough edges, but it was the only one of her I had. I had found it in the kitchen cupboard, hidden in a pot full of herbs. I had kept it ever since then. My mother never liked to have anyone take photographs of her. She said that photos were a tool of witchcraft or black magic. And she seemed to be right, because hers was full of pinpricks. That was the photo that I had brought with me, thinking I could use it so that my father would know I was his son.
He was a man who had given back his bride. He had taken her to a parent's house on foot, so that the noise of the motor wouldn't betray his misfortune in advance. Oh, he looked like a fairy. But it was a pity, because I could have buttered him and eaten him alive. Oh, there couldn't have been a better catch than him. Everybody says he's enchanting, but not a man to be known at first sight. Nobody knew what he'd come from. Someone who couldn't resist the temptation of asking him received the answer that he's been going from town to town, looking for someone to marry. It might be true, but he would have answered anything else the same way, because he had a way of speaking that served him rather to conceal than to reveal. I met him a short while ago, and I found him just as strange as everybody had said. He seemed like a very sad man to me. His golden eyes had caused the shudder of a fear in me. He reminded me of the devil. There is a reason to believe that he's some sort of monster.
A parasite who's gouging his hair and tearing his flesh in remorse. A family crime.
Your father was a man who wept on moonlit nights.
He had golden eyes.
Your father had green-colored dreams. He was a very sad man. I'm grateful to him for that. He was a good man, one you could trust. It was him that brought the mail, and he kept right on, even after he went dead. I remember the black day it happened. Everyone felt bad about it because we all liked him. He brought letters to us and took ours away. He was always telling us how things were going on the other side of the world, and doubtless he told them how we were making out. He was a big talker. Well, not afterward. He stopped talking then. He said he didn't see much point in saying things he couldn't hear, things that evaporated in the air, things he couldn't get the taste of. It all happened when one of those big rockets we used to scare water snakes with went off too close to his head. From that day on, he never spoke, though he wasn't struck dumb. One thing I tell you is, it didn't make him any less a good person. I'm grateful to him for that. He was a good man, one you could trust. It was him that brought the mail, and he kept right on, even after he went dead. I remember the black day it happened. Everyone felt bad about him because we all liked him. He was always telling us how things were going on the other side of the world, and doubtless that with one finger I touch the border of your mouth,
Borde de tu boca.
drawing it as if it came out of my hand. As if for the first time your mouth would half open, and it's enough to close my eyes to undo it all. Start over.
Cerrar los ojos y recomenzar.
I make the mouth I yearn reborn each time.
Boca que deseo.
The mouth my hand chooses and draws onto your face. A mouth chosen among all, chosen by me
Elegida por mí.
with sovereign liberty to draw it with my hand across your face,
Mi mano en tu cara.
by which any chance I do not seek to understand accurately matches with your mouth that smiles
Tu boca que sonríe.
from under the one my hand draws onto you.
Mano te dibuja.
You look at me.
Me miras.
You look at me from up close,
Cada vez más de cerca.
closer each time. So, we play Cyclops.
Jugamos al cíclope.
We look at each other, closer each time. And our eyes enlarge, come close to each other. They overlap, and the Cyclops
Bocas se encuentran.
look at each other, breathing confused.
Se miran. Confundidos.
The mouths find each other and struggle warmly, biting each other's lips. Merely leaning the tongue upon the teeth,
Apoyando apenas la lengua entre los dientes.
playing in their premises where a heavy wind comes and goes with an old perfume
Perfume viejo
and a silence.
y un silencio.
But then my hands seek to sink into your hair,
Lentamente tu pelo.
to slowly caress the deepness of your hair,
Hundirse en tu pelo.
while we kiss as if our mouths were full of flowers, of fish,
Nos besamos. La boca llena de flores o peces.
of lively movements, of dark fragrance.
Fragancia oscura.
And if we bite, the pain is sweet.
El dolor es dulce.
If we drown with the brief and terrible simultaneous breath gulp,
Breve y terrible de absorbe de aliento.
that immediate death is beautiful.
Muerte es bella.
There is one single saliva and one single taste of ripe fruit.
Una sola saliva y sabor a fruta madura.
And I feel you tremble against me like a moon in the water.
Temblar como la luna en el agua.
Suddenly, had 15 minutes or 3 hours gone by, something that could have been a noise, a presentiment, the faltering footfalls of a spirit, awakened him. In the darkness, relieved only by a dim streak of light from the street, filtering through the slit between the curtain, he managed to make out a silhouette rising from the bed next to his and silently floating toward the door. Still half asleep, he presumed that the constipated young man was going to the bathroom to try to move his bowels, or that he was feeling bad again, and asked in a low voice.
Hey, are you all right?
Instead of an answer, he heard very clearly the bolt on the door being slid open. It was rusty and creaked. He did not understand, sat halfway up, and slightly alarmed, asked again.
Is anything the matter? Can I help you?
He then was suddenly aware that the young man, Catman, so light-footed they seemed to be everywhere at once, had come back across the room and was now standing right next to his bed, blocking the little streak of light from the window.
Please, answer to me. What's the matter with you?
He fumbled about in the dark for the switch of the bedside lamp. At that instant, he received the first knife thrust, the deepest jab of all, the one that sank into his chest as though it were butter and pierced a collarbone. He was certain he had screamed, cried for help, and as he tried to defend himself, to free himself off the sheets tangled round his feet, he was surprised that neither his wife, nor his daughter, nor any of the other boarders came running to his aid. But in fact, no one heard anything at all. They had no way of knowing that in the bloody shadows, he had appeared to have been possessed of a supernatural strength, and he had managed to give only imaginary cries.
I had a peach taste in my mouth. Let me admit it. Before that night, I knew nothing about fruit-flavored vaginal creams. During the nights that followed, I would discover strawberry, pineapple, orange flavors, reminding me of the ice creams I used to love to lick when I was a boy in a marvelous ice cream parlor, the Salamanca, where unique Mexican fruits turned into subtle, vaporous ice creams that melted when they touched our tongues and palates, delivering its fullness in the instant they evaporate. I would imagine Diana with the tastes of my childhood in her vagina. Mamey, guayaba, sapote, guanabana, mango. She made marvelous use of this bizarre commercial product, fruit-flavored vaginal creams, which my imagination could take hold of. Something it could never do with the lingerie she kept in the hotel room dresser. I won't try to describe that. It was indescribable. A provocation, a gift, a madness. The quality of the lace and the silk, the way it intertwined, opened and closed, revealed and concealed, imitated and transformed, appeared and disappeared, contrasted wonderfully with that androgynous warrior maiden simplicity. Diana, the holy fighter.
My mouth is filled with earth! My mouth is filled with you, with your mouth. Your tightly closed lips pressing hard, biting into mine. I swallow foamy saliva. I chew on clumps of dirt, crawling with worms that knot in my throat, and push against the roof of my mouth.
My mouth caves in, contorted, lacerated by gnawing, devouring teeth. My nose grows spongy, my eyeballs liquefy. My hair burns in a single bright blaze.
The heat woke me just before midnight, and the sweat. My body was made of earth, layered in crusts of earth. It was crumbling, melting into a pool of mud. I felt myself swimming in the sweat streaming from my body, and I couldn't get enough air to breathe. I went outside for air, but I could not escape the heat that followed wherever I went. There was no air, not a breath. I had to suck in the same air exhale, cupping it in my hands before it escaped. I felt it, in and out, less each time, until it was so thick it slipped through my fingers forever.
Are you trying to make me believe you died?
It's true. The murmuring killed me. I was trying to hold back my fear, but it kept building until I couldn't contain it any longer. And when I was face to face with the murmuring, the dam burst. I went to the plaza. I was drawn there by the sound of people. I thought there really were people. I wasn't in my right mind by then. I remember I got there by feeling my way along the walls, as if I were walking with my hands. And the walls seemed to distill the voices. They seemed to be filtering through the cracks and crumbling mortar.
Yes. This town is full of echoes. They don't frighten me anymore. I hear the sounds of dogs howling and I let them howl. And on days when the wind is blowing, you can see it tearing leaves from the trees. When here, like you see, there aren't any trees. There must have been some time. And where did those leaves come from? There was a time when during the night, there was a moment when I could hear the noise of a fiesta. I went there to see what was causing the racket. And all I saw is what we are seeing now. Nothing. Nobody. The streets were as empty as they are now.
I heard them. Human voices. Not clear, but secretive voices that seemed to be whispering something to me as I passed, like a buzzing in my ears.
Then I didn't hear it anymore. It's because celebrating is tiring. That's the reason why I wasn't surprised when it stopped.
I moved away from the walls and continued down the middle of the street. But I still heard them. They seemed to be keeping pace with me, ahead of me or just behind me. And I wasn't hot anymore. Just the opposite. I was cold. And the further I walked, the colder I got, until my skin was all goosebumps. I wanted to turn back. I thought that if I went back, I might find the warmth that I left behind, but I realized after I walked a bit farther that the cold was coming from me, from my own blood. Then I realized I was afraid. I heard all the noise in the plaza, and I thought I'd find people there to help me get over my fear.
Worst of all is when you hear people chatting, as if their voices were coming out of the cracks. In spite of that, they are so clear. You recognize them.
And so, I reached the plaza. I saw that no one was there, even though I could still hear the murmuring of the voices, like a crowd on market day. A steady sound with no words to it, like the sound of the wind through the branches of a tree at night, when you can't see the tree or the branches, but you hear the whispering. Like that. I couldn't take another step. I began to sense that whispering, drawing nearer, circling around me, a constant buzzing like a swarm of bees, until finally I could hear. That's what they were saying to me. And at that moment, my soul turned to ice. that glimpse, that split of a moment, so vast, that I cannot see me. I am nothing in all the vastness. I am annihilated. I was thinking of you. The green hills. When we used to fly kites in the windy season. We could hear the sounds of life from the town below. We were high above on the hill, playing out string to the wind. As you helped me, your soft hands would tighten on mine. The wind made us laugh. Our eyes followed the string running through our fingers after the wind, until with a faint pop, it broke, as if it had been snapped by the wings of a bird. And high overhead, the paper bird would tumble and somersault, trailing its rag tail until it disappeared into the green earth. I was thinking of you. The times you were there, looking at me with your aquamarine eyes, hundreds of meters above the clouds, far, far beyond everything. You are hiding in God's immensity, behind His divine providence, where I cannot see you or touch you, where my words cannot reach you.
The day you went away, I knew I would never see you again. You were stained red by the afternoon sun, by the dusk filling the sky with blood. You were smiling. That was the last time I saw you. As you went by, you brushed the branches of the paradise tree beside the path, sweeping away its last leaves with your passing. Then you disappeared. The window panes misted over. Raindrops were threading down like tears. I watched, the trickles glinting in the lightning flashes. With every breath I breathed, I sighed. Every thought I thought was of you. Nothing can last forever. There is no memory, however intense, that does not fade.
I have a memory of having seen something like foamy clouds swirling above my head, then being washed by the foam and sinking into the thick clouds. I never grew tired of looking at you. I stared at you until I was nearly blind. I never grew tired of looking at you. At the vision you were. The moonlight pouring over your face. swollen, moist lips, iridescent stars, your eyes growing transparent in the night. This is the last thing I saw.
And your soul? Where do you think it's gone?
It's probably wandering like so many others, looking for people to pray for it. Maybe it hates me for the way I treated it.
When I sat down to die, my soul prayed for me to get up and drag on with life, as if it still expected some kind of miracle to cleanse me of my sins. I didn't even try.
This is the end of the road. I don't have the strength to go. This is death.